The train ride home was a journey through a patchwork of memories and emotions. As the countryside whizzed by, I found myself reminiscing about my time in Germany. The cobblestone streets of Berlin, the vibrant cultural scene, and the late-night study sessions at the university library had all shaped who I had become. Yet there was a yearning that those experiences could never quite fulfill. Home was calling me back, and I was ready to answer. The train's rhythmic clatter felt like a heartbeat, steady and reassuring. I looked out the window at the rolling hills and quaint villages, each one a step closer to my destination. The anticipation built with every mile, and I could barely contain my excitement. I had kept my return a secret, wanting to surprise my parents. The thought of seeing their faces when they saw me was the only thing that kept me from bursting. The station finally came into view, and my heart leaped. I gathered my belongings, my fingers trembling slightly as I zipped up my suitcase. The train screeched to a halt, and I stepped off onto the platform, immediately enveloped in the familiar sense of home. Freshly baked bread from the station cafe, the faint scent of pine from the nearby woods, and a hint of the cool, crisp autumn air. "Vanessa," I heard my mother's voice before I saw her. I turned to see her running towards me, her arms outstretched. She looked just as I remembered, her hair now streaked with a bit more gray, but her smile as radiant as ever. "Mama," I cried, dropping my suitcase and rushing into her embrace. She held me tightly, and I felt the tears start to fall. It was as if all the years of separation melted away in that single hug. "My sweet girl, you're home," she whispered, pulling back to look at me. Her eyes were shining with tears. "You've grown into such a beautiful woman." "And you've stayed as beautiful as ever," I replied, wiping away a tear. "Where's Papa?" "Right here, darling," came a familiar voice. My father emerged from behind a group of travelers, his eyes glistening with emotion. He walked up to us and wrapped us both in a warm embrace. "Welcome home, Vanessa. We've missed you so much." "I've missed you both more than words can say," I said, feeling the depth of my love for them swell within me. We stood there for a moment, holding each other, the world around us fading into the background. As we made our way back to the family home, I was struck by how little had changed. The streets were lined with the same old houses, their gardens meticulously kept. Neighbors waved as we passed, their faces lighting up with recognition. It felt as if I had stepped back in time to a place where everything was just as I had left it. When we arrived at the house, my mother ushered me into the kitchen, where the aroma of her famous apple pie filled the air. "I made your favorite just in time," she said with a wink. "Oh, Mama, you always know how to make me feel at home," I said, taking a deep breath to savor the smell. We sat around the kitchen table, the same one we had gathered around for countless meals. My father poured us all cups of tea, and we began to catch up on everything that had happened over the past 6 years. They told me about the community, the progress of the charity, and the small but significant changes in our town. "So how was Germany?" my father asked, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. "It was amazing, Papa," I replied. "I learned so much and met so many wonderful people, but there was always something missing. I realized that no matter where I go, home will always be here with you." My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "And we are so proud of you, Vanessa. You've always had such a big heart. We can't wait to see what you'll do now that you're back." I smiled, feeling a sense of contentment that I hadn't felt in years. I have so many ideas for the charity. I want to help even more people and make a real difference. "We know you will, dear," my father said, his voice full of pride. "You have always had a gift for bringing out the best in people." As the evening wore on, we laughed and shared stories, the bond between us growing stronger with each passing moment. The sun set outside the window, casting a warm, golden glow over everything. I knew then that I was exactly where I needed to be, home, with the people I loved, ready to start a new chapter of my life. The morning after my arrival dawned bright and clear, the early autumn sun casting a golden hue over everything. As I stepped out of my childhood bedroom, the familiar creak of the floorboards beneath my feet brought a smile to my face. The house felt alive with the sounds and smells of home. Downstairs, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon greeted me. I followed the scents to the kitchen, where I found my mother bustling about, preparing breakfast. "Good morning, Mama," I said, leaning against the doorframe. She turned and beamed at me. "Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well?" "Like a baby," I replied, walking over to give her a hug. "It's so good to be home." She handed me a steaming mug of coffee. "Sit down. Breakfast is almost ready. Your father is out back. He'll be in shortly." I took a seat at the kitchen table, savoring the warmth of the mug in my hands. The kitchen was just as I remembered, with its cozy wooden cabinets, checkered curtains, and the array of potted herbs on the windowsill. Everything felt so wonderfully familiar. A few minutes later, my father walked in, his face lighting up when he saw me. "Morning, Vanessa. How did you sleep?" "Wonderfully, Papa," I said, smiling at him. "It feels so good to be back in my own bed." He chuckled, ruffling my hair affectionately. "There's no place like home, is there?" "Absolutely not," I agreed, watching as he took his seat at the table. My mother set a plate of pancakes, bacon, and eggs in front of each of us. "Eat up, everyone. We have a big day ahead of us." As we dug into the delicious breakfast, my parents filled me in on all the latest news from our town. They told me about the neighbors, the progress of the charity, and the little changes that had taken place since I'd been gone. "So, Vanessa, do you have any plans now that you're back?" my father asked, looking at me over his coffee cup. "Yes, I do," I replied, feeling a surge of excitement. "I want to get more involved with the charity. I have so many ideas for how we can expand and help even more people." My mother's eyes sparkled with pride. "That sounds wonderful, dear. We've always known you had a big heart." "Thanks, Mama," I said, squeezing her hand. "I can't wait to get started." After breakfast, we spent the morning going through old family photo albums. We laughed at the pictures of my childhood, my first day of school, family vacations, and birthday parties. It was a trip down memory lane, and it felt like no time had passed at all. In the afternoon, we took a walk around the town. I was struck by how little had changed. The quaint shops and cafes were still there, their facades as charming as ever. We stopped by the local bakery, where Mrs. Henderson, the owner, greeted us with a wide smile. "Vanessa, it's so good to see you," she exclaimed, coming around the counter to give me a hug. "Your parents told me you'd be coming back soon. How was Germany?" "It was amazing, Mrs. Henderson," I replied, "but it's good to be home." "Well, we're all glad to have you back," she said, handing me a bag of freshly baked cookies. "Consider these a welcome home gift." "Thank you so much," I said, touched by her kindness. "I've missed your cookies." We continued our walk, greeting old friends and neighbors along the way. Everyone seemed genuinely happy to see me, and it warmed my heart. It felt like I had been welcomed back into a loving community that had missed me just as much as I had missed them. In the evening, we gathered in the living room for a family game night. It was a tradition that we had always cherished. We played board games, shared stories, and laughed until our sides hurt. It was a perfect way to end my first full day back home. As I lay in bed that night, I felt an overwhelming sense of contentment. Being back with my family, reconnecting with old friends, and planning for the future filled me with joy. I knew that the decision to return home had been the right one. I was ready to embrace this new chapter of my life with open arms, surrounded by the love and support of my family. My mother knocked softly on my door and peeked her head in. "Sweetheart, are you still awake?" "Yes, Mama, come in," I said, sitting up. She walked over and sat on the edge of my bed, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "I just wanted to say how proud we are of you. You've grown into such an amazing woman." "Thank you, Mama," I said, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you and Papa." She smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. "We're just happy to have you home. Get some rest, dear. Tomorrow's another big day." "I will, Mama. Good night." "Good night, Vanessa," she said, leaning down to kiss my forehead before quietly leaving the room. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a profound sense of peace. I was home, and everything was as it should be. The weeks following my return home were filled with a whirlwind of activity. I immersed myself in the charity work that my parents had dedicated so much of their lives to. Every day brought new challenges and opportunities, and I felt more alive and purposeful than ever before. My parents' charity, Helping Hands, had grown significantly over the years. They had established a community center that offered various services, from food distribution to educational programs. I was eager to bring fresh ideas and energy to our efforts. One sunny morning, I arrived at the community center early, armed with a notebook full of plans. As I walked through the doors, I was greeted by the familiar faces of volunteers and staff members. They welcomed me warmly, and I felt a deep sense of belonging. "Good morning, Vanessa," said Mrs. Thompson, one of our longest-serving volunteers. "It's wonderful to see you so enthusiastic." "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson," I replied with a smile. "I'm excited to be here and to contribute. I have a few ideas I'd like to discuss with everyone." We gathered in the meeting room, and I began to outline my vision for expanding our reach. "I think we should start by increasing our educational programs," I suggested. "We could offer more classes for adults looking to improve their skills and for children needing extra help with their studies." Mr. Davis, another volunteer, nodded in agreement. "That's a great idea, Vanessa. Education is key to breaking the cycle of poverty." "Exactly," I said, feeling encouraged. "And I also want to establish partnerships with local businesses to create job opportunities for the people we serve. If we can help them find stable employment, it will make a huge difference in their lives." The room buzzed with excitement as we discussed the possibilities. It was clear that everyone was on board and eager to contribute to the new initiatives. Later that day, while sorting through donations in the storage room, I met Mark for the first time. He was tall, with an easygoing smile and a warm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. He was sorting clothes and organizing items with a level of dedication that caught my attention. "Hi, I'm Vanessa," I said, extending my hand. "Nice to meet you, Vanessa. I'm Mark," he replied, shaking my hand firmly. "I've heard a lot about you and your family. You've done amazing work here." "Thank you," I said, feeling a blush creep up my cheeks. "I'm just trying to continue what my parents started and hopefully make a bigger impact." "That's a noble goal," Mark said, his eyes earnest. "I've always believed that helping from the heart is the best way to make a difference." We spent the rest of the afternoon working side by side, chatting about our backgrounds and aspirations. I learned that Mark had been volunteering at the community center for a few months and had a passion for social work. There was an instant connection between us, a shared commitment to making the world a better place. Over the following weeks, Mark and I worked closely together. His dedication and compassion were inspiring, and I found myself looking forward to our time together. He had a way of making even the most challenging tasks enjoyable, and his optimism was contagious. One evening, after a particularly long day, we decided to take a walk through the park to unwind. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the landscape. We strolled along the path, talking about our hopes for the future. "Mark, what made you decide to get involved with charity work?" I asked, genuinely curious. He looked thoughtful for a moment before answering. "I grew up in a tough neighborhood, and I saw a lot of hardship, but I also saw how a little kindness and support could make a huge difference. I wanted to be that support for others." "That's admirable," I said, touched by his story. "I believe we can do great things together." "I think so too," Mark replied, smiling at me. "I've always felt that helping others is what I'm meant to do, and meeting people like you reinforces that belief." As the weeks turned into months, our bond grew stronger. We shared our dreams, our fears, and our passion for helping others. Yet, despite our closeness, there were moments when Mark seemed distant, as if there were parts of his life he wasn't ready to share. I respected his privacy, but I couldn't help but wonder about the mysteries that lay beneath his warm exterior. One evening, while we were packing up after an event at the community center, I decided to address my curiosity. "Mark, you've been such a great partner in all of this, but I realize I don't know much about your past. Would you be willing to share a bit more about yourself?" He paused, his expression contemplative. "Vanessa, there's not much to tell. I've had my share of struggles, but I try to focus on the present and how I can make a positive impact." "I understand," I said gently. "But if you ever feel like sharing, I'm here to listen. We've all been through things that shape us." He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "Thank you, Vanessa. That means a lot." As we walked out into the cool night air, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Mark's story. But I knew that in time, the truth would reveal itself. For now, I was content to enjoy the new beginnings and the promising future that lay ahead, surrounded by the love of my family and the shared purpose with a newfound friend. As the months rolled by, Mark and I grew increasingly close. We were a formidable team, spearheading new projects and initiatives that brought tangible improvements to the community. Our shared passion for charity work created a bond that felt natural and unbreakable. Yet there was an undercurrent of mystery about Mark that I couldn't ignore. We spent countless hours together, working late into the night on proposals, organizing events, and brainstorming new ways to reach those in need. Our conversations ranged from the practical aspects of our work to philosophical discussions about the nature of kindness and altruism. But whenever the topic drifted towards Mark's past, he would deftly steer it back to the present. One rainy afternoon, as we were sorting through donations at the community center, I decided to broach the subject again. The sound of raindrops pattering against the windows created a soothing backdrop, and I hoped it would ease the tension. "Mark," I began, folding a donated sweater. "You've been such an amazing partner in all of this, but I can't help feeling like there's so much more to you that you're not sharing." He paused, his hands still in over a box of books. "Vanessa, I've told you the important parts. The rest, it's just not relevant to what we're doing here." "But it is relevant," I insisted gently. "We're friends, Mark. I want to understand you better, not just as a colleague, but as a person." He sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. "It's not that I don't trust you. It's just, some things are hard to talk about." I reached out and touched his arm. "I understand that, and I'm not trying to push you. I just want you to know that I'm here for you, no matter what." Mark looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and something else I couldn't quite identify. "Thank you, Vanessa. That means a lot." Despite our growing emotional closeness, there were moments when Mark seemed to retreat into himself, as if haunted by memories he couldn't escape. These moments were fleeting, but they left me feeling unsettled and yearning to break through the barriers he had built around his heart. One evening, after a particularly successful charity event, we decided to take a walk along the river. The moonlight danced on the water, creating a serene and almost magical atmosphere. We walked in companionable silence for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. "Mark," I said, breaking the silence, "do you ever feel like there's something you're running from?" He stopped walking and turned to face me, his expression guarded. "Why do you ask that?" "It's just a feeling I get sometimes," I admitted. "You seem so dedicated and passionate about helping others, but there's a part of you that feels distant, like you're carrying a weight that you won't let anyone help you with." Mark ran a hand through his hair, looking out over the water. "You're very perceptive, Vanessa. Yes, there are things in my past that I haven't dealt with, but they're my burden to bear." "Maybe they don't have to be," I said softly. "Sometimes sharing the load can make it easier to carry." He gave a small, sad smile. "Maybe. But some things are better left buried." We continued our walk in silence, the unspoken words hanging heavily between us. I wanted to press further, to offer him the support he clearly needed, but I also respected his need for privacy. It was a delicate balance, and I could only hope that in time he would feel comfortable enough to open up to me. Our work at the community center continued to thrive. We launched new programs, formed partnerships with local businesses, and saw the positive impact of our efforts reflected in the lives of those we helped. Mark's dedication never wavered, and his compassion for others was unwavering. But the walls around his heart remained intact, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something significant. One day, while we were preparing for a fundraiser, I decided to broach the subject once more. We were in the kitchen, preparing sandwiches for the event, and the atmosphere was light and relaxed. "Mark, can I ask you something personal?" I said, carefully slicing a loaf of bread. "Of course," he replied, looking up from the salad he was making. "Do you ever think about where you see yourself in the future?" I asked, trying to approach the subject from a different angle. "Beyond the work we're doing here, I mean." He paused, considering my question. "I do sometimes. I want to keep helping people, maybe on a larger scale. But I also want to find peace with my past." I looked at him, sensing an opportunity to delve deeper. "What kind of peace are you searching for?" He sighed, putting down the knife he was holding. "I'm not sure. Maybe it's forgiveness or closure. Maybe it's just accepting that some things can't be changed." "Whatever it is, you don't have to go through it alone," I said softly. "I'm here for you, Mark. And so is everyone at the community center. We're a team, and we support each other." He smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "Thank you, Vanessa." That means more to me than you know." As we finished preparing the food, I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps in time, Mark would let down his guard and allow me to truly know him. Until then, I would continue to stand by his side, ready to offer my support whenever he needed it. The fundraiser was a resounding success, and as the evening came to a close, I found myself reflecting on the journey ahead. Mark and I had built something special together, and I was determined to see it through. No matter the challenges, I knew that our shared commitment to helping others would guide us forward. But in the quiet moments when the world slowed down and the night grew still, I couldn't help but wonder about the secrets Mark kept hidden. And I hoped that one day he would find the strength to share them with me, so that we could face them together. The air was crisp and cold, signaling the approach of winter. The community center was abuzz with activity as we prepared for the annual holiday celebration. It was one of our biggest events of the year, a time when the entire town came together to celebrate, support one another, and share in the joy of the season. Mark and I were in the storage room, sorting through boxes of decorations. The atmosphere was festive, with holiday music playing softly in the background and the scent of pine filling the air. "Do you think we have enough lights?" Mark asked, holding up a tangled string of colorful bulbs. I laughed, shaking my head. "We always need more lights. The kids love them." He grinned, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "I suppose you're right. Let's make this place sparkle." As we worked, I noticed that Mark seemed more relaxed than usual. There was a lightness in his demeanor that had been absent for some time. I hoped it was a sign that he was ready to open up about his past. That evening, after the decorations were up and the community center was transformed into a winter wonderland, Mark and I decided to take a break. We stepped outside, the cold air biting at our cheeks, and made our way to a bench overlooking the town square. The lights twinkled around us, creating a magical ambience. "Mark," I began hesitantly, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day, about finding peace with your past." He looked at me, his expression serious. "It's something I think about often, Vanessa, but it's not easy." "I know it's not," I said gently, "but I want to help you if you'll let me. You don't have to carry this burden alone." He was silent for a moment, his breath visible in the cold air. "There's something I need to tell you," he said finally. "Something I've been keeping to myself for a long time." I reached out and took his hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Whatever it is, I'm here for you." He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "I grew up in a rough neighborhood, as you know. But what I haven't told you is that my family was deeply involved in some unsavory activities. My father was part of a criminal organization, and from a young age, I was expected to follow in his footsteps." I listened, my heart aching for him. That must have been incredibly difficult. "It was," he admitted. "I wanted to escape that life, but it wasn't easy. When I was 16, I made the decision to leave. I ran away and cut all ties with my family. I started fresh, determined to build a life based on helping others, not hurting them." I squeezed his hand again, feeling the weight of his words. "You've done an amazing job, Mark. You're one of the most compassionate people I know." "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "But the past has a way of catching up with you. A few months ago, I received a letter from my younger brother. He tracked me down and told me that our father was arrested and our family was falling apart. He asked for my help." "What did you do?" I asked, my heart pounding. "I've been sending him money, trying to help from a distance," Mark explained. "But I know it's not enough. I feel torn between the life I've built and the family I left behind." I looked at him, my eyes filled with compassion. "Mark, you don't have to face this alone. We can figure it out together." He looked at me, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Vanessa. Your support means more to me than I can express." As we sat there, hand in hand, I felt a deep sense of connection and understanding. Mark had finally shared his secret, and it only made me admire him more. He had overcome so much and dedicated his life to helping others, despite the shadows of his past. The next day, we gathered the volunteers for a meeting. Mark stood beside me as we addressed the group, his usual confident demeanor slightly tempered by the vulnerability he had shared with me the night before. "Thank you all for your hard work," I began, smiling at the familiar faces. "This holiday season, we have an opportunity to make a real difference in the lives of those who need it most." Mark stepped forward, his voice steady. I know many of you have faced your own struggles, and it's your resilience that makes our community so special. Together, we can overcome anything." The room filled with applause, and I could see the pride in Mark's eyes. He had taken a significant step by sharing his story with me, and I hoped that in time he would feel comfortable enough to share it with others. As the weeks went by, we continued to work side by side, our bond growing stronger. Mark's openness allowed us to support each other in new ways, and our shared determination to help the community never wavered. One evening, as we were closing up the community center, Mark turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Vanessa, I've been thinking about what you said, about not facing things alone." I nodded, encouraging him to continue. "I want to visit my brother," he said, his voice filled with resolve. "I need to face my past and see if there's a way to help him more directly." "I'll go with you," I offered without hesitation. "You don't have to do this alone." He smiled, a mixture of relief and gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you, Vanessa. Your support means everything to me." As we stood there, the future seemed uncertain but filled with possibility. We were on the brink of a new chapter, one that would test our strength and resolve. But I knew that together, we could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey to uncover the truths of Mark's past and forge a path forward would not be easy, but it was a journey we would undertake together. And in that moment, I felt a profound sense of hope and determination. We were ready to face the unveiling of the past and embrace the possibilities of the future side by side. The chill of winter had fully set in as Mark and I prepared for our journey to his old neighborhood. The decision to visit his brother had been made with a mix of trepidation and determination. It was a journey into Mark's past, a confrontation with the ghosts that had long haunted him. We set out early on a cold, grey morning. The landscape outside the car window transitioned from the quaint familiarity of our town to the gritty streets of Mark's childhood. As we drove, I could sense Mark's tension growing. His normally calm demeanor was replaced with a quiet intensity, and I reached over to give his hand a reassuring squeeze. "You don't have to do this alone," I reminded him softly. He glanced at me, his eyes filled with gratitude. "I know, Vanessa. Thank you for being here." As we neared our destination, the streets grew narrower and more dilapidated. The once familiar sights of Mark's childhood now bore the scars of neglect and hardship. We parked outside a run-down apartment building, and Mark took a deep breath before stepping out of the car. The building's exterior was a patchwork of peeling paint and broken windows. We walked up the creaky stairs to the third floor, where Mark's brother, Alex, lived. Mark hesitated for a moment before knocking on the door. It opened slowly, revealing a young man with dark hair and tired eyes. He looked startled to see Mark, but quickly masked his surprise with a guarded expression. "Mark," Alex said, his voice a mix of relief and wariness. "I didn't think you'd actually come." "Alex," Mark replied, stepping forward to embrace his brother. "It's been a long time." I stood back, giving them space for their reunion. After a moment, Alex's eyes shifted to me, curiosity and suspicion evident in his gaze. "This is Vanessa," Mark introduced me. "She's been helping me with the charity work." "Nice to meet you," I said, offering a friendly smile. Alex nodded, then stepped aside to let us in. The apartment was small and sparsely furnished, a stark contrast to the warm, welcoming atmosphere of the community center. We sat down at the kitchen table, the tension in the air palpable. "Why are you here, Mark?" Alex asked bluntly. "After all these years, why now?" Mark took a deep breath, his eyes meeting Alex's. "I needed to see you to understand what's been happening. I want to help, Alex, but I need to know what we're dealing with." Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's a mess, Mark. After Dad was arrested, everything fell apart. The debts, the threats. I've been trying to keep things together, but it's hard." Mark listened intently, his expression one of deep concern. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I could have helped." "I didn't want to drag you back into this," Alex admitted. "You escaped, Mark. I didn't want to ruin that for you." "You didn't ruin anything," Mark said firmly. "We're family, and we should be there for each other. Tell me what I can do to help." As the brothers talked, I observed their dynamic. There was a deep bond between them, despite the years of separation. Mark's determination to support his brother was unwavering, and Alex's initial wariness began to soften. "I've been sending money, But it doesn't seem like enough, Mark said. What else can we do? Alex looked at him, a mix of hope and uncertainty in his eyes. There are people we owe money to, dangerous people. I've been trying to negotiate with them, but it's risky. Then we'll negotiate together, Mark said resolutely. We're stronger as a team. A heavy silence followed, the weight of their situation pressing down on all of us. I knew this confrontation was just the beginning, and that the real challenges were yet to come. That evening, we returned to our hotel, exhausted but resolute. As we sat together in the small room, Mark looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and determination. "Thank you for being here, Vanessa," he said quietly. "I couldn't do this without you." "We're in this together," I replied, taking his hand. "We'll find a way to help Alex and get through this." The next day, we arranged a meeting with one of the men Alex owed money to. It was a risky move, but Mark was determined to face the situation head-on. We met in a dimly lit cafe on the outskirts of the neighborhood, the air thick with tension. The man, a burly figure with a scar running down his cheek, eyed us with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "So, you're the brother," he said, his voice gravelly. "What makes you think you can fix this?" "I'm here to negotiate," Mark said calmly. "Alex and I want to find a way to settle this debt without any more trouble." The man chuckled darkly. "Negotiate? This isn't a game, kid. Your family owes us a lot of money." "And we're willing to pay," Mark replied. "But we need time and a clear plan." The man leaned back, considering Mark's words. "Time, huh? That's a luxury you don't have." "We're not asking for much," I interjected. "Just a chance to make things right. We can start with a down payment and work out a schedule." The man looked at me, his eyes narrowing. "Who are you?" "Someone who believes in second chances," I said firmly. "And someone who believes in Mark and Alex." After a long, tense moment, the man nodded slowly. "All right, you have 1 month to come up with the first payment. If you fail, there will be consequences." "We won't fail," Mark said, his voice steady. "Thank you." As we left the cafe, I could feel the weight of the encounter lifting slightly. It was a small victory, but it was a start. Mark and Alex had a chance to make things right, and we would do everything in our power to help them succeed. In the days that followed, we worked tirelessly to gather the money for the first payment. Mark and I reached out to contacts, organized fundraisers, and even dipped into our own savings. The community rallied around us, their support a testament to the impact Mark had made through his charity work. The day of the payment arrived, and we met the man again in the same cafe. This time, we were prepared. Mark handed over the money, his eyes unwavering as he faced the man. "This is just the beginning," Mark said. "We'll continue to make payments until the debt is cleared." The man counted the money, then nodded. "You've earned yourselves some time. Don't waste it." As we walked out of the cafe, I felt a sense of relief and hope. The confrontation had been challenging, but it had also brought us closer together. Mark had faced his past, and with Alex by his side, he was ready to build a better future. Back at the community center, we were greeted with cheers and hugs from the volunteers. It was a moment of triumph, a testament to the power of perseverance and the strength of community. That night, as we sat together in the quiet of the community center, Mark looked at me, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Vanessa, for everything." "We're just getting started," I said with a smile. "The real work begins now." And with that, we embraced the future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together. With the first payment behind us, Mark, Alex, and I threw ourselves into the work of securing the remaining funds to settle the debt. Each day was a whirlwind of activities, fundraisers, meetings with potential donors, and organizing events to rally the community's support. The outpouring of help and generosity from our friends and neighbors was overwhelming, but there was a lingering sense of urgency that kept us on edge. One evening, after a particularly successful fundraiser at the community center, we found ourselves back at the small apartment where Alex lived. The room was filled with a sense of camaraderie and hope, but an undercurrent of tension was still present. "Mark, Vanessa, I can't thank you enough," Alex said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know where I'd be without you." "We're family," Mark replied, placing a hand on his brother's shoulder. "We'll get through this together." As we talked, I couldn't help but notice how Mark's eyes would occasionally dart toward the door, as if expecting something or someone. There was a restlessness about him that I couldn't ignore. Later that night, as we walked back to our hotel, I decided to address it. "Mark, is everything okay? You seem distracted," I said gently. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "There's something I haven't told you, Vanessa. Something I've been trying to figure out how to say." I stopped walking and turned to face him, my heart pounding. "What is it? You can tell me anything." Mark took a deep breath, his eyes meeting mine with a mixture of vulnerability and resolve. "There's more to my past than just my family's involvement in crime. There's someone I've been hiding from, a man named Nekink." "Nekink?" I repeated, the name sending a chill down my spine. "Who is he?" "He was my father's right-hand man," Mark explained. "When I left, I not only abandoned my family, but also betrayed Nekink. He's been looking for me ever since, and I've been trying to stay one step ahead." "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" I asked, my voice filled with concern. "I didn't want to put you in danger," Mark said softly. "But I realize now that keeping secrets only makes things worse. Nekink is ruthless, and if he finds out I'm back, he'll come after me, and anyone close to me." The gravity of the situation sank in, and I felt a wave of fear and determination wash over me. "We're in this together, Mark. We'll figure out a way to deal with Nekink." In the days that followed, we intensified our efforts to secure the remaining funds. The urgency of the situation added a new layer of pressure, but it also brought us closer together. Mark and I worked as a seamless team, our shared determination driving us forward. One afternoon, as we were preparing for a meeting with a potential donor, Alex burst into the room, his face pale and his eyes wide with fear. "He's here," Alex whispered urgently. "Nekink found us." My heart raced as I looked at Mark, who immediately sprang into action. "Vanessa, we need to leave. Now." We quickly gathered our things and slipped out the back door of the community center, our footsteps echoing in the alleyway. The tension was palpable as we made our way to a safe location, a small hidden office that Mark had arranged as a contingency plan. Once we were inside, Mark turned to Alex. "How did he find us?" "I don't know," Alex replied, his voice shaking. "But he's not alone. He has men with him." Mark clenched his fists, his eyes blazing with determination. "We need to come up with a plan. We can't let him derail everything we've worked for." As we huddled together, brainstorming strategies and contingency plans, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Nekink's pursuit than just a grudge against Mark. There was something deeper, something that Mark hadn't yet revealed. Later that night, as we sat in the dimly lit office, I decided to confront Mark about it. "Mark, there's something you're not telling me," I said quietly. "Why is Nekink so determined to find you?" Mark hesitated, then took a deep breath. "It's not just about my betrayal. When I left, I took something valuable, something that belonged to Nekink." "What was it?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. "A ledger," Mark admitted. "It contained details of all the illegal activities and transactions that Nekink and my father were involved in. I took it as insurance, a way to protect myself if they ever came after me." "Do you still have it?" I asked, realizing the magnitude of the situation. "I hid it in a safe place," Mark replied. "But if Nekink finds out where it is, he'll stop at nothing to get it back." "We need to use it," I said, a plan forming in my mind. "If we can expose Nekink's operations, we can take him down and put an end to this." Mark looked at me, a mixture of hope and fear in his eyes. "It's risky, Vanessa. If we make a move against him, it could escalate quickly." "I know," I said firmly. "But it's our best chance to end this once and for all." The following day, we set our plan into motion. Mark retrieved the hidden ledger, and we contacted a trusted journalist who had a reputation for exposing corruption. We arranged a meeting in a discreet location where we handed over the ledger and shared our story. As the journalist pored over the contents of the ledger, her eyes widened with realization. "This is explosive," she said. "If this goes public, it will bring down Nekink and his entire operation." "We're counting on it," Mark said. "But we need to stay under the radar until it's published." The next few days were a whirlwind of anxiety and anticipation. We stayed hidden, constantly on the move to avoid detection. The tension was almost unbearable, but the hope of a resolution kept us going. Finally, the day arrived. The story was published, and the impact was immediate. News outlets picked up the story, and law enforcement agencies launched investigations into Nick Hank's operations. The once feared man was now a fugitive, his empire crumbling around him. As the dust settled, Mark, Alex, and I returned to the community center. The sense of relief was palpable, and the support from the community was overwhelming. We had faced our fears and emerged victorious, stronger, and more united than ever. That evening, as we stood together in the community center, Mark turned to me, his eyes filled with gratitude and love. "Vanessa, I don't know how to thank you. You've been my rock through all of this." I smiled, my heart swelling with emotion. "We did it together, Mark, and now we can finally move forward." With Nick Hank's shadow lifted, we focused on rebuilding and expanding our charity work. The future was bright, filled with possibilities and the promise of new beginnings. As we stood hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next, I knew that no matter the challenges, we would face them together, stronger, braver, and more determined than ever.